Thank you so much. We are so thrilled to be here and welcome everybody, friends, members of these communities, allies. It's just an incredible thing. I'm Jamie McKenzie. I grew up from age 6 in Harbor Springs, came over to Petoskey for 7th grade, went away to school in 1977 and never thought I would ever live here again for obvious reasons. So it's very exciting for me to see how this community has changed. I had a career as a performer in New York. I had a career in New York as a communication skills teacher, and I used to teach people how to moderate panels, so the bar is going to be very high for me today to see if I can actually do it myself. I want to introduce our panel, and I'm going to start at the far end and just talk a little bit about each of these people. I think they're all incredible for being here today. So down at the end, we have Rebecca Otto, and Rebecca is Community Impact Director at the United Way of Northwest Michigan. She's an advocate for promoting inclusivity around Northern Michigan, and she said to me, most importantly, she is Aurora Otto's mom. And next to her is Aurora. And Aurora is going into 8th grade at Concord Academy. And I think of myself in 8th grade on a stage like this, and I can't even imagine it. So that's very exciting. And Aurora told me that they're into music and linguistics, which is very cool. Next to Aurora, we have Mikey Winnell, and they are part of the North Central Michigan College Gender and Sexuality Alliance, and very much into singing. Mikey will be performing at the concert this evening, and a talented songwriter as well. And in addition, closest to my heart, Mikey works at Bear Creek Farm, which I think is very cool. Next to Mikey is Becca Lynn. Becca's the two-spirit artist behind Quirkway Designs. She's a citizen of the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa, leader of the Waganakising Nagwagan Group, which, if I understand this correctly, Becca, it combines elements of two-spirit as well as LGBTQ++? Yeah. So if you're wondering what that alliance means. Then next to Becca, we have, all right, there we go, Nevaeh Wells. And she is a graduating senior at Petoskey High School. She's, I think, was it CMU you were hoping to go to?
MCA.
Oh, not North Central Michigan College. She's very much into animation and art. And if that doesn't work out, she thinks she might be a doctor. No ambition there. Okay. All right. So next to Nevaeh is Anna Argetzinger, also a Petoskey High School student, a rising senior, and into early childhood development, and a member of the Petoskey High School Diversity Group, which I'm really hoping to hear more about very shortly. Next to Anna is our headliner tonight, sometimes known as Dill Billy, but also D. Dill. And I was noticing that D spells her name D-E-I, which if you've had 5 years of Latin means them of God, which I think is pretty cool. And I spent some time looking at Dee's website this morning and listening to music. And if you haven't done it, you need to go find some of that. I'm going to read you a review of one of the albums. Their songwriting is so strong, you can taste it. Sweet, spicy, savory, organic, and homegrown, sometimes complex, sometimes so simple, and oh so very delicious. In addition, I heard this lyric in a song called Frey today, and I can't get it out of my head. It references the shape we were born with and the shape we make whole. I mean, there's some real songwriting. I just love it. And speaking of songs, Dill Billy happens to have swag. So later on at the reception, there will be an opportunity to buy either the LP, for those of you who are my age, or the CD, for those of you who are in your 40s, or figure out how to download it for the real people in the room. Okay. With that, I'm going to have a seat. Our panel's going to cover 3 basic areas. We want to celebrate our voices, our journeys, their bravery, to share with all of you our vision for a strong, safe future, and we have a really big panel for an hour. So what we're planning on doing, and it may not entirely work out, is saving questions for the reception afterward, because everybody, it's a big panel and everyone's going to want to tell their stories. If you can hold on to them for that, and in particular, Dee and Becca and I and Rebecca at the end, we're happy to take any question you might throw at us. Some of these rest of these folks, I'm sure, will be eager to answer your questions, but sound it out. And if it's 101, if it's something that is really basic, Google it, right? If you're thinking about some of the stuff that's going on. All right, so the first topic we want to talk about is, and anybody can lead off, is how and when did you come to terms with who you were, and that may have changed since you first thought about it, how you defined it, and how did you deal with it? So anybody who wants to, leap right in. Yeah? Just jump in.
I'm not gonna lie. When I was a kid, I had no idea. I was raised in northern Michigan, very small little schools. I had no idea that liking the same gender was even a thing. And when I first heard of it, my family gave me some really bad ideas about it. So, all these feelings that I had, because in my mind, it was like there was no difference until my family told me that, yeah, liking other girls is bad. So I had internalized homophobia. And my friends from childhood would tell you that, like, I was mean. And then when I went to a bigger school and I started to realize that this is okay and that just because my family says that it's not okay doesn't mean that their word is law, I started to become more open and start accepting myself and others. And that's kind of when I discovered who I was at a friend's party. They were like, yeah, well, I'm not straight. And then before that, I was kind of going on a journey because I got access to the internet. And anyone who gets access to the internet early can tell you that there's a lot of stuff on there. But I kind of realized at that party, like I stood up on the bed and I was like, I don't think I'm straight. So that was my experience.
For me, I grew up here too in Petoskey, so you can probably imagine how coming out was for me in a very Christian household, which is nothing wrong with Christians. I'm saying that because I said that once, and then a woman was like, well, I'm a Christian. Do you hate me? No. But anyways, coming out was hard to my mom because I came out to her crying after my girlfriend broke up with me after like a month. So it was very hard finding myself, and I went through a lot of pathways of like being a demigirl, being a demi-boy, and then I found out that I was gender fluid, which was very difficult for me, and trying to accept that part of myself as also having internalized homophobia was very difficult, but I'm glad I'm here today, and if you told me back then, 12-year-old me, that, hey, you're gay and you're going to be on a panel talking about it, I would be like, there's no way that I would be able to do that today. So.
Thanks, Anna. I also grew up here, though I consider myself really lucky to have a very supportive family. They're all very liberal. And my older sibling, Lake, actually, they came out as gay and then also came out as non-binary. And I pretty much did the same exact thing a couple years later. So it wasn't a very stressful experience for me because I already knew that everyone was going to be really supportive, but it was definitely a pretty confusing experience. I experienced a lot of compulsive heterosexuality, and I guess when I was younger, I sort of thought, if I was gay, like I would just know, because that's what happens for a lot of people. They know from a really young age, but that was not the experience for me. It took me a long time of processing through a lot of things to realize how I actually felt about different genders and to realize that I actually am attracted to women and not to men. Took even longer to understand my own gender identity, kind of a similar thing where I thought, if I'm not a girl, then surely I just automatically know, but that's definitely not the experience for everybody. And it took me a long time and a lot of self-reflection to really fully understand my place in the world and how I view myself and how I feel. Yeah, it took me a long time, but I really have never been happier and felt more comfortable in my own skin than I do now. So it was overall a really good experience.
See, I was one of the ones that knew from a very young age that something was different. You know, I didn't totally understand what, but I was not feeling the same things that my friends were. I did not like flirting with little boys. But it wasn't until I was probably a teenager that I came to terms with things internally. And then it wasn't until college until I started to actually come out. I had a lot of internalized homophobia, a lot of self-hate. I was so scared of making people uncomfortable or, you know, having people think about me differently, or this idea that this little part of me, you know, as somebody who is queer could change entirely how somebody saw me. And that level of like anger and hate towards me when I knew I was a good person and living in a good way was terrifying. When I went down to University of Michigan after high school, I was really thought I was going to go down there and just be gay and everything was going to be good because I was away from home and it was going to be a big city. And that was not the case, believe it or not. There was still a lot of work I had to do once I was away from home to accept myself and to be open about it, and lots of therapy. And I was in a really amazing LGBTQ women's group therapy that they had down at U of M through CAPS. You know, and even in that, my first semester, I did not talk all semester until the very end, where I uttered the words, "I'm gay," and just bawled. Just because I'd been holding so much in, you know? I wasn't okay with feeling those feelings, so I shut down all feelings. And meanwhile, you know, played basketball, volleyball, softball, was involved with the tribal community, was seen as a very happy kid, and I wasn't. It was all a performance. So I'm really excited that these young ones are up here sharing their story now, and that I can be up here and help facilitate this event. Yeah.
I want to kind of play off of a couple of things that Becca said. One of the things that was really important to me during my journey was the support of people who were open and accepting. I was raised in Mexico City in an evangelical Christian missionary household. None of this was going to go over well with them. And during the time that I was in high school, and I just wrote about this recently on Facebook and just really was open about what was going on, I had struggled with suicidality, and I was doing a lot of deconstructing my faith and deconstructing who I was and who I was programmed to be as a child of the parents that I had been grown into. And I'm looking over here. Are you Miss Lark? The person that I referenced that saw me and called my mom was Miss Lark. And so you've been on my mind a lot. Because she said to my mom, she needs help. And my mother said, unless you go to a Christian counselor, I'm not doing anything with this. And she also said to me, let's not bother your dad with this when we get home. And that was not really what a young child needed to hear. And so I'm lucky enough to be married into and have a child who's a part of the tribal community. So I've done a lot of digging into generational trauma and breaking those things. And probably the best thing that my kiddo has ever said to me is, Mama, I wish that you had been born into an accepting family like I was. She's been very healing. And when you have a child that lives this openly in her truth, and is always advocating for that, it's much easier to be yourself. So thank you for that, kiddo.
That was beautiful. Hey y'all, I'm Dee. So I didn't grow up in this community, but I'm really happy to be here with all y'all, hearing your stories. And I grew up in southern Indiana, rural Red County, surrounded by cornfields. Kids came to school on their tractors, one time even a cow. Um, I grew up in the church. It wasn't an evangelical church, but I still sort of was indoctrined with some pretty harmful religious trauma, which, you know, impeded my ability on my journey to discover both my sexuality and my gender. Um, I always knew from a very young age that I didn't feel at home in my body, but I had no representation to sort of bounce that idea off of. I didn't know any queer people. I didn't know any trans people. And I just knew, well, I related more with the boys. And so I played sports and I tried to look like a boy and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until later that I realized I was queer, and like a lot of folks on the panel have already talked about, that came with a lot of internalized homophobia for a very long time, which, you know, can lead to suicidality and other forms of harm to oneself, especially if you don't have role models or a representation both in your community or in the media to, you know, see yourself in. And a lot of times, you know, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. That representation of queer and trans folks, they weren't all positive. And still to this day, right? There's like tropes that we see in media. And it took a very long time to see myself represented anywhere. I had a lot of coming outs, and I feel like as queer people, we come out sometimes daily, right? Whether it be about your sexuality or about your gender. I came out, I was the first out person in my high school at 16. And then when I was 20 in college, I decided to come out in a newspaper article about my music as trans. And that was also hard because at that time there were no words. I didn't know about two-spirit communities. I didn't know about non-binary. There wasn't that word at the time. But I knew I didn't feel at home in my body and something didn't feel right. And so I came out as trans, but I didn't feel seen by the trans community. I didn't look the part. And so that was, even though I came out at that time, it was a very long time before I felt empowered enough to, you know, ask folks to see me that way and to even learn that there were options like non-binary and using pronouns they, them until I was in my late 20s, early 30s. So yeah, a lot of coming outs over the years.
I was just thinking this morning that this month represents 40 years since I came out to my mom. And it's been coming out ever since. I came out a little bit in college and then went back in. And, you know, when I was 17, I had a fling with a guy who was a client of my mom's law firm. And he told her that we were lovers. 17-year-old kid. You know, he was 25. Anyway, that scared me back in the closet for a long time. So thinking about that 40 years and the many, many comings out, I had no reference for gay people until a gay couple moved into the Marina Village condos in probably 1975, and everybody called them the boys. And it's very funny to me that my husband is over here, he's 67, I'm 63, and people still call us the boys. But I wanted to ask the younger members of the panel, how safe do you feel in school? What is school like? I heard this thing on NPR about a kid who's transitioning and is in Florida and has to move to Rhode Island in order to continue the treatment because it's become illegal to receive it in Florida. But when she got there, was shocked to be in school in Rhode Island and have pride flags and a diversity group and all that. So What's it like up here?
I feel so very safe. Concord Academy, which is the school that I go to, is the only school that I've gone to before, and it's been the best school that I've gone to. Because some schools aren't even just academies or considered schools; they're like groups of people, and it's one of the best ones that I've gone to.
Excellent.
Sorry. Being a student at Petoskey High School and being in Petoskey all of my life has been hard, and I really think that there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm glad I can be a part of Petoskey, like, Diversity Club, because if I wasn't, I don't know what I would do with myself. Like, I don't think I could live, like, at that high school anymore, because lots of people say, oh, it's a great high school, it's wonderful, but there's so much stuff that doesn't get recognized, like how the sports are important and band is important, but that's the only important thing about Petoskey High School is seen by other people, which is hurtful because it feels like none of the rest of us matters. There's also the bullying, which I got in middle school and high school. Still to this day, I deal with bullying, and I just try to bounce back with knowledge, and it kind of shocks them. But trying to like get rid of that is very difficult, and it's really hard on my self-esteem. Like as a child, I lost my grandpa in 7th grade. He died of cancer, which was very difficult for me because he was like the happiest person in my life. He was always so happy. I never knew why, but he was always so happy, and it made me very happy to see him happy. So losing him and also dealing with bullying and trying to like figure out myself, which I finally did this year, I'm pretty sure. Hopefully nothing changes. Hopefully my body doesn't do a 180, but getting here was very difficult, and I'm glad I've had my best friends, Nevaeh and Sophia and Kieran, and oh my God. No. Natalie, I'm so sorry.
All right, you don't have to
Sage. Yeah, you guys are very important. So, you too, Miss Lusky. You're not just a teacher to me anymore. You're my friend and a role model to me. So, yeah.
I just wanted to say, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I didn't come out, I didn't even realize that I was queer until after I graduated high school. And I'm just so incredibly grateful for people like Anna and Nevaeh who are so truly and authentically themselves, because I know if I hadn't had any influence, well, not influence, but if my older sibling was straight and cis, I can only imagine how much longer it would have taken me to realize who I actually am. I wonder if I would have even considered it at all for, if that hadn't happened, I very well could be 21 years old still thinking that I am a cis straight woman and not happy with who I actually am. And I'm just really grateful because you guys are so, like I said, authentically yourselves, that I'm sure there are other kids like me who, without seeing representation, would never even consider the possibility that they're queer. And it just makes me really happy to see people like you guys out there.
I just want to say thank you. That was so sweet and nice. Thank you. In Petoskey, I'll admit, like with the adults around, there is so many like helpful resources, like the library here at Crooked Tree Arts Center, Petoskey High School counselors, most of them. But there are a lot of good support groups here. But when it comes to the kids, I will admit there is a long way to go for a lot of them. Back in middle school, there was this one boy who was known for being a very aggressive kid. He was pretty okay with me for a while. He was in my art class until he found out that I was not straight, and for an entire hour, He stared at me and said, "You know you're going to hell, right? You know you're gonna burn in hell, right?" And I was just tired, so the teacher sent us down to the counseling office when I asked her if I could move seats. And down at the counseling office, the counselor looked very fed up. Like, I think he did that before. He's been known for doing that. Like, he would go up to people and try and fight them or do a lot of bad things. And the counselor was so nice and so understanding. She said, "You handled this so well. Like, I'm so sorry for what he has said. I will talk to him." And that experience could have gone so much worse if it wasn't for the art teacher who backed me up and the counselor who gave me support. So as I said, the adults are great. Hopefully the kids will get better.
How many of you on the panel have been bullied? Show of hands. Yeah. I was thinking about riding the bus from Harbor Springs Elementary School, and yesterday I said to my brother, "I still haven't forgotten that you told those kids on the bus that I was still playing with Barbie." And I didn't speak to him for a week. We were the only kids who lived within a mile in either direction out on the shore drive. But I think we've all been through some bullying. I guess my question would be, what advice now would you give to somebody who hasn't come to terms with who they are so that they can navigate it as best they can? Do you have any thoughts about that, gang?
I would just say that there is no right way or right timeline to come out. If if you know that you're queer, but you know that people are not going to be accepting and that's not something that you feel comfortable dealing with yet, you absolutely don't have to tell anyone. You can tell one person, you can tell 10 people, whoever you're comfortable with. It doesn't have to be 0 to 100 coming out to absolutely everybody in your life, which was kind of the way that I went, but that was greatly influenced by the fact that I had such a supportive family and friend group around me. So yeah, just there's no right way to do it. You can take your time. You can, figure out who you are and then tell the world if that's what you're comfortable with.
So in our family, we have a bit of advice. We say find your weirdos. Or in this case, find your queerdos. And it's another reason why I have been known by a lot of people to always be rocking a rainbow in some way, shape, or form. Because just like the safety pin a few years ago of having somebody have a visual representation that they know that you are a safe person, you're willing to put yourself in a position to be criticized just so that other people have a safe space to go to. On a tangent, but it was kind of the, getting to test this out. Aurora went to school once and was afraid of taking her Mario backpack with her. And she said, "I'm afraid I'm going to get made fun of." And I said, "Well, that certainly could happen. What's the other thing that could happen?" And she said, "I might find my weirdos." I said, "Yep, you might." So she took her Mario backpack to school and made quick friends with another girl who absolutely loved Mario, and they had something in common to talk about. And so we have just really taken that to heart in as much as we can of making sure that we are very visible so that people know that we are safe. Because we do have the luxury, at least for my own self, of feeling safe enough to be out there and visible and be able to be that support for somebody else. So find those people that you can be safe with.
The initial question that you asked, do you get bullied at school, or have you been bullied? At Concord, thankfully, I haven't really been bullied at all for just being queer and trans. It's just been for other things. So that's nice.
Excellent.
Okay, when it comes to advice on coming out, I've got to say this. It is not your responsibility, or let me paraphrase this. You don't have to come out to someone. It's not your responsibility to educate them on certain things. You are not as you said, you're not Google. You don't know all the answers. It's not your responsibility. You're not a search system. If you feel comfortable, you can come out. If you don't feel safe, you don't have to. It is always up to you. It's your sexuality, it's your thoughts that are all your own, nobody else's.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Sorry, I'm blinking. As Nevaeh said, like, you're not Google either, and don't use that either. Like, please, I'm like begging you, because I did, and it didn't help at all. Try, maybe, just try and find a person or someone you trust to go to, or books. Books are so helpful in finding, like, ways to, like, identify with yourself, because it really gives you good definitions, or just finding someone that you admire, even just trying to, like, connect them, like Markiplier. You know, he's a good representation for me. Or finding a teacher who you think will be supportive, talking to them about it, because they're older, they obviously know more. So just trying to find that a person that you trust is very, very key to me, because when I came out, I didn't know I had the choice to tell my mom or not. I could have just said, no, I don't want to tell you, but I didn't know I had that choice at the time. And as me and my mom's relationship has gotten closer, I feel like we're bridging, like, we're coming closer together, and she's accepting me more, which is very good, and I'm very happy about it. But it takes time if you do come out to someone that you didn't mean to, or they're not accepting. It takes time for them to know, like, that it's okay, even if they have different beliefs or stuff like that.
I also remembered. Just real quick thing. I was that person in middle school that people came to ask, am I gay? It was a little questionnaire. It wasn't fun. Don't do that. Do not take up that mantle. It is so energy draining.
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead. Becky.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit. And to echo what they said, there's no one way to be queer. There's no one way to be trans. There's no one way to be two-spirit. Just live authentically and figure out what feels good for you. I feel like this all reminds me of before I came out to my family, the summer after my freshman year in college, there was that Macklemore song, The Same Love Song. You know, it was a bit cheesy, you know, but it was like a little bit of an anthem, and I'd like watched that video and was like annoyed that I was crying at the, you know, about the lyrics of I can't change even if I tried, even if I wanted to, you know, and it really sunk in differently for me because this is who I'm always going to be. Either I can show myself to my family, you know, and I can't control how they are going to react. All I can do is control how I react and how I feel about myself. And it wasn't going to change. And I had tried. I tried very hard not to be queer and not to have these gender questions going on and to conform and to not cause a stir. And it was making me miserable. You owe it to yourself to love yourself. You owe it to yourself to show up for yourself. Everyone here deserves that, no matter how you identify. If you're straight, cis, queer, trans, just live authentically. And that's not only doing service to yourself, but that's doing a service to everybody around you. Because everybody is beautiful, right? We're all beautiful in our own little ways, and you will find your weirdos or queerdos, and just finding people you feel safe with. Just take your time.
Anybody else?
I guess just a last little thing. When I came out, though I really did not have anyone in my life who was outrightly homophobic, transphobic, bigoted, it definitely was a bit of a difficult experience because almost all of my friends up until that point were cis and straight. And the more that I delved into understanding myself and, you know, presenting in the ways that make me comfortable, the less we were able to relate to each other. And so those relationships, we kind of grew apart, and it was very difficult because there was a period of my life where I really felt like I didn't really have any friends. And I guess just to anybody who might be going through that or who hasn't come out because you feel like, you know, you're not going to have friends and there's not going to be anybody to understand you, from my own experience, I can promise you that it might take time, but you will find your people and they will find you. Yeah, just you'll find your people, I promise.
That's so great. I was struck just now by, I have a question here. What would you do differently if you got a do-over? But it's sort of covered in what a lot of these folks just said. And I can say that I came out to my mom when I was 23 and moved to Boston. And just like Becca, I thought it was all going to be totally cool and everything would be done. And, you know, largely it was great. But I then did not come out to my father for 5 more years because my mother said, "Oh my God, you can't tell your brother." And I told my brother, he was like, "So what? I knew that." And, "Oh my God, you can't tell your father." And my father was just really mad that I did not tell him for all that time and that everyone else knew. So our neighbors have a grandchild who was up a few summers ago, 16, and like me, everyone in his family knew he was gay, and Dad was coming up the next day, and he was worried about whether to come out or not. And I said, you know, I would imagine the word's gotten to him somehow from someone in the family, but I think you ought to do it. And he did it, and it worked out, and I was really kind of glad that I did that. So with that, is there anybody who wants to say, if you had a do-over, is there something you would do differently? Yeah. Anna?
If I had a do-over, I'd probably give myself a pep talk. Like, I wouldn't tell myself that it's gonna be okay, because I kind of hate that phrase, or like, it's fine, it's gonna be all right. There's no words that you can describe to someone that it will be okay. That's just too short of a sentence. That's 3 words. I would definitely give myself a real long talk and tell myself to not talk to strangers on the internet, because that didn't go so well. Anyways, I would try to not make it short and simple, because that's not how we are. We are all different, and we're all lovely and very pretty. Yeah, so I wouldn't make it short and sweet. I would give myself a long talk and talk to them about how lovely we are and how far we've grown and things to expect in our lives.
That's a really good segue to the next section of our conversation here today, which is, what's the good news right now for all of you? What are you most grateful for, happy about with what you're seeing here? I know there's a lot of bad news out there right now, particularly in the world of trans and LGBTQ communities and all that's going on in other states. But we really want to celebrate today, and I want to focus on the positive. So I'm going to start with 4 years ago when Barry and I were driving through town on a Pride weekend that we didn't even remember was Pride weekend. We drove past the pit and saw 250 people waving rainbow flags. Give it a big applause. We honked the horn, we drove around the block, we honked the horn again, and I broke down and cried for about a day because I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't even imagine in my world of growing up here that was possible. And when we marched last year, 22 people from our church marched with us, which was awesome, you know, just amazing. So, anybody else, where's the good news?
I can drive. I can't drive that much. I can only go 30 miles per hour. I have a moped, if you did not know.
Okay.
I'm working. 1 gallon of gas. Well, technically 2. But anyways, like, that was a huge step for me. Like, that's what I'm very proud of. I can go wherever I want. Like, and it's kind of like, you know, having that freedom and everything. But I'm also really excited for my future. Like, the Diversity Club, hopefully next in September, will be going to the legislator's office. And like talking to legislators about, what was the word? Social justice? Yep. So we'll be talking to them, and that's just a huge step for me. And seeing all the progress that we have made so far, like making our high school no place for hate. I'm using quotations because there's never going to be no hate, but we can try as hard as we can. And we got our designation this year as well. We got it last year, and I'm hoping we can keep doing it and keeping it as a tradition at the Petoskey Diversity Club. So I'm just really proud of the progress I've made as a person, and I'm really looking forward to my senior year of high school. So, yeah.
I can say one of the things that gives me the most hope is folks that are younger than me, a lot of them at this table. And yeah, just, yeah, no issue with, you can have as many pronouns as you want and as many identities as you want. The acceptance of their peers, whether or not folks identify as queer or trans or non-binary, gives me a lot of hope. And not to disrespect the elders, because queer and trans and non-binary and two-spirit people have always been here. But some of the folks that hold more traditional right-wing values, well, not going to live forever. So I'm glad that there's a younger generation here that gives me a world that I can hope for.
Also, I'd like to note, especially because the word traditional means something very different for me, like as a Native person, and touching on the fact that we have always been here. I just want to let you all, these Waganakasing lands, this land of the crooked tree here with the Little Traverse Bay and Sohodawa Indians, queerness and transness has always been sacred. This land remembers that. On this land, you are safe and you are sacred. Regardless of you're Native or not, like, this is a safe place. We can't control the community, we can't control the bigots, we can't control ignorance, but just spend time outside, and connect with that and know that trans and queer people and two-spirit people have always been here. And I think that's amazing. And that was like a big part of me accepting who I am, is knowing that even if there's bigotry and homophobia and transphobia due to colonialism and boarding schools and compulsory Christianity against our communities, my ancestors would have always accepted me.
I touched on this a little bit earlier, but it makes me really happy to hear that the people at the PHS Diversity Club are actually, like, you're going out and talking to legislators. You guys are making moves to make Michigan a safer place for LGBTQ people politically. And that was something that, when I was younger, I'd heard of the Gay-Straight Alliance at the Petoskey High School. I actually went to Concord for middle school, and there were queer people there as well. But that was more of just a social thing, and I didn't really see people my age making political moves to actually enact real change and real policy change. So it makes me really happy to hear that you guys are taking the step to do that.
Something that makes me really happy is, as I said, my family is not that accepting, but I've come out to them and they've kind of just learned to deal with it. It's like they love me, so gotta take the good with the bad in their eyes. I told my family, I kind of hinted that there was an event today. I didn't tell them what it was about because I was afraid that they would get down on me, because my family is very much you can be not straight, you can be gay, but just don't tell people about it. Don't make a hubbub. So eventually, because I was writing the poetry, my family came up to me. Well, my uncle, I care about his opinion a lot. He's like a father figure to me. He came up to me and he was like, "What is this event even about?" And I kind of danced around. I was like, "Well, it's June, so there's stuff going on." And he said, "Juneteenth?" And I said, "Juneteenth is this month, yes, but this is for Pride." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "Well, I just thought that you wouldn't want to go since it's about being gay and stuff." He said, "Of course we want to go. We want to go there to support you." He's not here now because I don't want them to hear me recite poetry. I would die of embarrassment. But just knowing that my family is still going to support me and that they're able to get past their beliefs for me meant so much, and it makes me really happy.
I also just want to say that I will not let any legislator, any person of power, take away Michigan from me, or any any area I live. I will make sure that it is safe, because there has to be at least one queer person in that like city or town or 10 million. Like, I will not let that happen, and that's why I'm doing this. Especially since like I've been having issues with my mom. I just want to make sure she knows, like, I'm not going to stop fighting. I'm not going to stop like going to diversity club. And a little religious thing, I wanted to get rebaptized because I sinned a lot as I like grew as a person. But my mom said, well, then you'd have to stop going to diversity club, and basically said you have to stop being gay. And I was just like, I don't think I can do that. I don't think that's a possibility. So just trying to get that acceptance that like Nevaeh has with her uncle is a step for me, and I'm not gonna let her take that away from me. And I've been trying to find a church that I can go to and stuff. So it's a work in progress.
I just remembered something. We're in a changed church. This used to be a church.
Yeah.
So
Methodist.
like a big change of audience and community.
So I was going to say a couple of things. One, I'm just grateful that there is a myriad of generations represented here, not just on the panel, but also in the audience. And I want to thank all of you for showing up. To me, that feels like a big win. We're having conversations right now that would have only happened inside of our own heads. And we're sitting up here on a panel inside of this space that is so well known in our community. And you have shown up to hear what we have to say. And that just amazes me. That blows me away. And I hope that we can continue conversations of this bent. This is really helpful as a community.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. That's wonderful. Now we have one last little bit that we can talk about. We've got about 10 minutes left. And the last piece is, how can people support us? What do you all think it takes to be a great ally, to help other people as they're going through this process? What can those out there do to support us?
One of the things that I really struggled with, childhood friends, extended family, while they are all supportive of the LGBT community or LGBTQ plus, there is a lot of what I would call passive allyship, which is, they believe that we should have rights, but are they going to come out to a protest to support us? Probably not. If I asked, maybe a couple would come, but if it was just like they knew that it was going on, but nobody asked them, I would not expect them to show up. So I guess what I would say to allies out there in the audience is, what is most important for me, at least, is being an active ally, especially if you are cis and straight. That is a level of privilege that you have that we don't. And you likely are in a safer place to have those difficult conversations with people who are very close-minded. And it's something that I have really struggled with, especially with my extended family, because they love me, but they have made almost no effort to really get to know me after I came out. I'm not the same person that I was at 15. And all they really know is the person that I was at 15. And beyond that, something that I have found pretty frustrating, though I don't want this to be, negative, I want this overall to be very positive, but something that has been difficult for me is, especially within passive allyship, to me, it feels a lot like people who are passive allies not willing to put in the actual work to truly help our community and make change. It is a little bit like using the fact that you're an ally as sort of a booster for your own social status. which to me really does not feel like allyship. It feels like taking advantage of the community, you know? So to any allies in the audience, my advice would be educate yourselves. You know, if there are people in your life that are happy to answer questions, that's great, but maybe direct those questions to be less about educational sort of things. That's a lot of stuff you can find online. There are so many content creators who are queer that, you know, provide content and education about those things. But I would say, you know, ask them what their experience has been. Get to know who they are beyond just a friend or a family member, and get to know them as a queer person. And yeah, you know, educate yourselves, like I said. I'd say that's about it, but yeah, active allyship, having those difficult conversations, to me, that's what really matters, and that's what really makes a difference within our community.
That is such a good point that you bring up about allyship. I had found a graphic a while back that said, ally is not something you can self-identify as. It's a title that you earn. Absolutely. Let your actions speak for themselves. So it doesn't do anybody any good for you to say that you are an ally if they can't see that you are also being an ally. That the other thing that I would point out, and it's something that Aurora has made abundantly clear to us through her journey, is that we evolve as humans. You know, we want to think that people who were making poor choices before can grow and do better, and that people are always trying to work for their own betterment and trying to become the more authentic version of themselves. And that can change over time as you're discovering new things about yourself. And Aurora has pointed out on more than one occasion, I wasn't any less myself when I identified as a boy, as a young child, and I wasn't any less myself when I identified as non-binary when I was a young child, and I'm no less myself now as I have found my name and my identity to where I am right now. So understanding as an ally that it's not going to look the same for everyone, and it's not necessarily going to stay the same. We change as people, and so giving people that grace and that space to explore that as it changes, and not ever accusing them of being wishy-washy or not true to themselves. It may be exactly true in that moment, and it may change in a few years. That's the nature of human beings.
I would also add that nobody shows up as a perfect ally right away, depending on where you start from. And so, you know, I think myself, as somebody who I consider myself, you know, an anti-racist ally, I don't show up in those spaces all the time perfectly, and I've made mistakes, and I need to be accountable for that. And sometimes people call you out, right? And that can feel scary, and that can feel, you can have feelings of shame about that. And sometimes that makes you want to hide away and not come back and show up. And I think as an ally to the queer, trans, you know, two-spirit communities, you know, you don't have to have it all figured out and show up perfectly in order to be an ally, but just know that if you mess up, I hope that, you know, folks will correct you kindly, but also, you know, you have the onus of being accountable to learning from that. And the only way you're going to learn from that is by making mistakes, showing up, and adjusting your behavior for the future. And you don't have to wait to show up as an ally until you're well-read and have it all figured out. You're going to mess up. We're going to call you out on it. I'm going to correct you on my pronouns. It's okay.
And just jumping off of Dee's point, I would also just say, you know, like they were saying, you don't show up as a perfect ally 100% of the time, and it takes a lot of learning and unlearning things. You know, I, as a white person, I do my absolute best to be a good anti-racist ally. Am I perfect all the time? Absolutely not. Have I said and believed racist things without understanding that it was racist at times? Absolutely. And so I would just say, you know, if people do call you out on racist beliefs or narratives from growing up as a white person, or transphobic, homophobic beliefs or narratives from growing up cis and straight, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. I think those words carry a obviously a negative connotation as they should, but it doesn't mean that you're automatically a horrible person. It just means you have room to learn and grow.
Like we've been saying, like there's no perfect way to be like a gay or whatever. There's no perfect way. There's no perfect way to be an ally either. And what really made me realize that today before we came to this panel is I was talking to the librarian, the teen librarian, Nisa, I think. We were talking and I told her how I've been trying to go by different names. And she's like, well, you tell me. Even if it changes every week, I don't care. I want to try and learn you, and whenever you figure it out, you just come and tell me, and we can talk about it. And that really stuck with me, and just having an ally who's like understands that it's gonna change a little bit and over time, that sort of thing, and made it very easier. And don't think you gotta hang up pride flags. I mean, it's nice. It's kind of pretty to see as you drive by. Like, hey, I'm one of you. But, like, you don't have to represent it to the whole world. You just have to really show up, be there, be supportive. You don't have to, you know, I'm not trying to be, like, rude, but, like, make a big deal about it, if that makes any sense. But also be there, if that makes any sense.
Wow, this was wonderful. Can you believe an hour has passed? I want to thank the panel, and I want to thank all of you for coming. I'm going to start with Rebecca and Aurora and Mikey, who will be singing on the stage later on. Becca, Nevaeh, Anna, Dee, I'm not going to call you Day, and encourage you to come to the reception, which is in the Carnegie Building. Is that where it is? Yeah, in the Carnegie Building. And find us, ask us questions. So give these folks a big round of applause. And
I'm going to clap for everybody too.
it's just awesome. And get yourself back here for this concert tonight because we have some amazing talent. All right? Take care.
Quick advice. Please teach your kids to be accepting because kids are honestly the most mean people at times. It's not even adults, it's kids.
Well, the kids learn it from the adults, right? So we're teaching our kids to be kind and compassionate in general. All right. That's all.
Also, if you don't come to the concert, I will find you.
No, they won't. It's okay. You're safe.